Fan of his, but I figured I'd put the show on last night. I don't know why I turned it on. Well, this was the worst show I had ever seen until Artie Lange showed up. And then it became, a different kind of show. And one that I'm not condoning here, because I'm not condoning him coming in there and just, firebombing the entire festivities, which is what he did. But what would you expect? You invited Artie Lange there. What would you expect? You got what you expected. I mean, I don't know what you expected to get from him sitting there. I don't know, but it was first of all, it wasn't funny. And Buck, as he was doing his stand-up, was kind of swaying to one side and the other. He couldn't stand still. It was like, you tell him, you just stand still, please. Would you just take a mark and stand still? He was swaying to this side and swaying to that side. The thing with the telescope didn't work. And then he's got Favre there, okay? So he tries to do an opening bit with Favre, which just lays there. It doesn't work. Then they bring Favre out. And the essence of the Favre interview is that this is the first time that Favre's had a chance to fire back at his critics. Wait a second. People would have run to Favre's house. They would have walked there to interview him. The idea that Favre finally, as Buck said, this is the first chance that Favre has had a chance to answer back. What? If Favre would have done an interview one-on-one, any news organization would have sent a jet for him and flown him to their studio. They would have had guys camping out on his lawn to do a one-on-one with him. He wouldn't talk to anybody. And he had nothing to say anyway, because all he was doing was lying to everybody, including the Jets, who he lied to for a year to try to get to Minnesota. And we all know he's going to Minnesota. Joe never even brought up the fact that it's already been reported for a week that his family has blocked out the hotel in Green Bay for the first week in November, when the Vikings are scheduled to play in Green Bay. So I got to sit through the Favre interview, which to me was just tedious. Then I got to sit through Ocho Cinco and Michael Irvin, who I wouldn't watch. If they wanted to show up and talk to me in my living room, I wouldn't let them in. I mean, Ocho Cinco. I mean, give me a break. Guy, how can you actually take a guy seriously who changes his name to Ocho Cinco? Right? Then we see a thing with David Wright, which I guess it was about having lunch with him, because I don't know what I got from it other than the fact that they ate lunch together and walked down the street together. I didn't get anything. Other than that, I didn't get anything from it. And then you got to Artie Lange, which is what everyone who cared about it was writing about today, that Artie Lange went berserk on the show and, just basically had HBO, I guess, running for the hills today. Now, it's HBO. He's allowed to curse. Even they got Brett Favre to curse, which everyone went, ooh and ah. All right, great. Brett Favre got the... I bet you it's not the first time Brett's cursed. So I thought the show was awful. And I was about to turn it off when Artie Lange started with his tirade, and I did sit there and watch it, and it was interesting to watch Buck squirm, and Paul Rudd want to hide who is a talented guy, want to hide his head in a cushion. I'm not familiar with the other guy. I guess he's a comic. I'm not familiar with him. I'm not familiar with him. Is that Amy Sedaris, his sister, brother, or something? Are they related? Because I know who she is. I don't know who he is. I don't know him. So the other guy was there. But I know Rudd from the movies. You know Rudd. He's made a lot. He's a talented guy. But Artie Lange, who I know, and I don't hear Artie. I know who he is. I don't hear him very often. Now you know why. Went off on this crazy, absolutely vulgar tirade. I mean vulgar. Yeah, I mean you gives vulgar a bad name. It was so vulgar. So I mean I don't know why you'd be Fox and want your lead announcer associated with this. Where this is the guy that you want to sell to the country. This is the same Joe Buck who went off on what's called, the receiver. Yeah, who I mean. Randy Moss. When Randy Moss mooned the fans and he went crazy about how it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. Well, I guess that's over with after last night. That was the most, was the worst thing he'd ever seen, and how dare he, and this. Well, I guess last night that kind of made up for that, because I understand it's HBO, but boy, oh boy, it was ugly, and the only reason the show was even worth discussing was just how outrageous Artie Lange was, and whether or not HBO was actually going to apologize, or how they were going to handle. I don't even know what HBO said. Has HBO said anything about what he said last night? I mean, did they apologize?
There's differing opinions here. Artie this morning said that that Ross Greenberg had told him that when things get slow...
To go crazy?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So Ross is now condoning Artie's antics on the show last night?
They've distanced themselves a little bit from it, and he went on his own tirade this morning. Artie did.
Oh, well, Artie's going to, he's going to milk this for everything he can get. But the show would have gotten absolutely hammered because it was just a bore. It was a snooze fest. It was a terrible show. It was hard to watch. And then I just wondered how HBO was going to cover their rear ends after they had to deal with the fact that Artie basically insulted everyone who ever lived in about 10 minutes, from Tony Romo to all different groups of people, to Jessica Simpson comparing her to Chris Farley, and he did have a couple of lines that were actually, when they weren't just so profanity laced and vulgar. I mean, they were actually, a couple of them were actually funny, but it was just funny to watch Buck try to get the show back. I mean, that's a rough thing to be in. Because, everybody has been in that place at one time or another where the show has gotten away from you, where someone has taken the show and kind of just hijacked it, and now they're just off on a tangent. That's what happened. He couldn't get the show back last night. And that's happened to everybody at some time or another. It's happened to me. I mean, try interviewing Don King sometime. I mean, you can never get the show back. I mean, or interview Jesse Jackson. You can't get the show back. You can never get the show back to where you want to get it, so you get it hijacked from you. Well, last night he got the show hijacked from him. But it was a terrible show. Awful. Hard to watch. I mean, they got to be begging Bob to come back after that. I mean, they got to send a call for Costas after that last night. And Costas was actually in it, if you saw last night, for a brief, ridiculously unfunny cameo, as was Bud Selig. But it was a terrible show, and then it got unbelievably vulgar at the end. That's the way you sum it up. So these guys actually went and then continued it for another half hour on the internet. After
10 minutes. After
it looked like Buck wanted to kill Artie Lange, he actually did 10 more minutes with him on the internet?
Correct, the overtime.
Was he nice to him there after he wanted to almost kill him?
From what I heard, it went about the same.
On what Michael Irvin called white-on-white crime last
that was
night
at the
end, which is actually a good line at the end of the show. I mean, for Artie Lange just attacking Joe Buck last night. Well, I'm sure most people didn't see it. I actually happened to see it, and it's there's no way anything good came of it. I could say this, because it was terrible, and then it was unbelievably vulgar. So that was the way you sum it up. I just want to know what HBO's reaction to it would be. Was that something they planned, or was that something that just kind of got away from them? Well, who knows? Back after this.
The Fan, WFAN.